because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro.
55 seconds left in the penalty, a minute and 27 seconds left in regulation time. Boston 4, Montreal 3. Lafleur coming out rather gingerly on the right side. He gives it into Lemaire, back to Lafleur.
The sickest Montreal Canadiens podcast.
You're in the ball!
Sports entertainment like no other.
Rejoint, on lui fait perdre la rondelle, une passe devant. Et c'est le dégagement et ce sera la victoire des Canadiens. Coupe Stanley pour les Canadiens. Le 23e de l'histoire.
You found the dogs! John, you found the dogs! He found the dogs! And all together, they worked a young team to the top. And now, a 24th Stanley Cup banner will hang from the rafters of the famous Forum in Montreal. The Canadiens win the Stanley Cup.
Brought to you by Energy Transportation Group. Driven to be different. 8.6 beer. Intense by nature. And Locage. If the last time you went to Locage was when the Habs won the Cup, it's time you went back to Locage. It's gonna be sick.
Marinaro on this Tuesday, November 22nd, the Buffalo Sabres came to town and delivered the smackdown on the Montreal Canadiens, smacking them around and beating them by a score of 7-2. The Sabres struck early and they struck often. As a matter of fact, 2:13 into the game, it was already 3-0 for the Buffalo Sabres. And 2:13 into the game, I think everyone said, all right, this game is over. Even though Cole Caulfield was able to narrow that lead to 3-1, but he scored at the 2-minute and 57-second mark. But the Canadiens got off on the wrong foot. The defense got off on the wrong foot. Jake Allen, it was not one of his better nights. I thought he was particularly bad tonight. And if the Canadiens weren't playing 2 games in 2 nights, and if it wasn't predetermined that Allen was going to play tonight and Montembeault was going to play tomorrow, Marty St. Louis would have made a goalie change. But because he needed Montembeault tomorrow, that's the reason why he didn't do it. But it was by far the worst performance of the season by the Montreal Canadiens. And I, for one, like when this kind of performance happens because I can remind everyone that the Montreal Canadiens should be rebuilding because they are far from being a legitimate Stanley Cup contender. And even if they would happen to make the playoffs, it would take a miracle. Now, I know it's been good up until this point, and I have to tell you that once again, I was entertained tonight. It wasn't the Canadiens' best effort, but it was a wide-open hockey game. Unfortunately, the Canadiens made too many mistakes, but we saw goals. We saw scoring chances. We saw, some punches thrown. We saw some hits, some of them good, some of them illegal. We saw some good saves. We saw some not so good saves. We saw pretty much everything in this hockey game. And we also saw Tage Thompson just dominating this hockey game. The big man, 6'6", 225, went over to the Buffalo Sabres in that trade for Ryan O'Reilly several years ago. He really has established himself as one of the best players and best goal scorers in the National Hockey League. As a matter of fact, only 3 players in the NHL have more goals than him thus far. And Jeff Skinner, this is the second time I've seen him manhandle the Montreal Canadiens and dominate the Montreal Canadiens to a point where I tweeted earlier this evening that Jeff Skinner owns the Montreal Canadiens, not Jeff Molson. It is the Sick Podcast brought to you in part by Locage. If the last time you went to Locage was when the Habs won the Cup, it's time you go back to Locage. The menu will surprise you. And I'm going to tell you right now that I will be at Locage LaSalle tomorrow at around 1:30 in the afternoon as I prepare to watch the Canadiens men's national team take on Belgium's national team. That game goes tomorrow afternoon at 2 p.m. I will be at Locage LaSalle. So if you're going to be there, or if you wanted to bump into me at one point in your life, I'm going to be there. So I hope you can join me there. Joining me right now from TVA Sport, Marc-André Perreault. Comment vas-tu, mon chum?
Living the dream in Columbus for a second week in a row.
Yes.
How are you?
Yes, so TVA sent you straight to Columbus instead of taking in the game tonight at the Bell Center versus the Sabres. So you're there, you're well installed. Did you have a chance? Were you working today at all?
I was. Well, when I got here, it's not the best traveling friendly destination, Columbus. So lots of you have to go through
no direct
Toronto
flight?
or Washington. No.
Okay.
So got here at 4:45.
Okay.
Then I was live at 5. So
Yeah,
yeah,
live at
it's
5 o'clock on TVA Sport with Jean-Charles
with
Lajoie, of
Josh.
course.
There you go.
GC
Yeah.
at TVA Sport. So you had a chance to watch the hockey game tonight.
I did.
Safe to say it was the worst performance from the Canadiens this season?
It was bad. It was bad. It was the worst because, I mean, it's 3-0 and there's not even 3 minutes played. And before the game, Martin Saint-Louis earlier today said the most important will be the first 10 minutes because this team is desperate. So we need to be good the first 10 minutes. And guess what? It didn't happen. So in his press conference, just heard him saying, well, I was right. And he was laughing. So I don't think he's mad. He's not pissed. He's just probably scratching his head, wondering what just happened. But you said it, and I'm gonna repeat myself again.
Mm-hmm.
After Game 1 against Toronto, which was a great show, I said, just take it, enjoy it, because there's gonna be some rough times with this team. Down the road, and it's what happened last week in Columbus. It's what happened against the Flyers first few minutes tonight. So let's see how it's going to turn out. But I know you're happy with that loss. I know you are.
Yeah. Mind you, some people watching right now, and they're watching on YouTube, they're watching on Facebook, they're watching on Twitter live. They're probably going to have one of these tonight. As a matter of fact, this one is
Maybe
empty.
two.
You think it's a good idea that I have one too, or what?
Probably. I don't know. Is there alcohol in that?
Oh, yeah. This one here has 7.9%.
Oh, you're going to be tipsy, my friend.
Yeah, 7.9%. As a matter of fact, this is very unconventional that I do this. But if you want to keep people entertained for a second, I'm just going to go into the fridge and I'm going to get one. Should I do that?
Of course.
Okay, let me see if I can. I should have one handy here. Hold on.
Let's talk about who? Tage Thompson, Jeff Skinner, Alex Tuck. Your call. You said about Tage Thompson. He was in that trade for Ryan O'Reilly, and last year he got 68 points in 78 games. They offered him $50 million US, obviously, for 7 years. People were like, "Oh, they're crazy."
Now I feel foolish, by the way, because they're in my canteen. I don't have any in my fridge, but maybe I can send a text message to someone here in my house.
Such a great moment about Tage Thompson.
Oh yeah. Okay. What did I miss? Because I'll probably send a text to someone here in the house to actually go get me one in the canteen, and I'll have one live on air. But
I was just talking about his contract when they offered him a contract. Like, a lot of people were like, "What are they? What are they thinking?"
My God, is he good though? Hey, listen, I knew he was good. I'm going to take it a step further. I knew he was very good. He's elite.
Oh well,
he's elite.
He's a monster out there with Alex Stock, who's a big boy also. I mean, they have everything to be good, but they have Craig Anderson back in the net. I'm not sure Craig Anderson. I mean, it's not only because of him they lost 8 games, and you know what's funny? I was here October 27th, and they are 4-2 at this moment. And the coach press conference, and we're talking about the culture, how tough it was to change it, and now they made the turn and they're so confident, and they're talking about Dahlin, Thompson, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And look at that. It's the same old story, and I can tell you people in Buffalo are sick and tired of that because they're passionate, but now they're losing fans because they can't take it anymore. I mean, it's 11 years without making the playoffs, and I mean the season is very young. But
they lost 8 in a row before winning tonight. They were in a bad moment.
8 in a row.
Yeah, the Sick Podcast brought to you in part by 8.6 Beer, intense by nature of the beer for those who follow their instinct and live their passion in order to make their mark. And I was asked about the percentage of alcohol. The red can has 7.9. It should be noted there's a white can, a blue can, and a black can. And I believe the black can is more than 10%. I believe the blue can is about 8.6, and I believe the white can is the one with the lowest percentage of alcohol, but somewhere in the 7s, I think. But anyway, so there's 4 different color cans, okay? The beer is excellent, by the way. It's really excellent. And the Sick Podcast brought to you in part by Energy Transportation Group. If you're in transportation sales, customer service, operations, HR, or admin, well, the good news is Energy Transportation Group is hiring for all positions. I was in conversation with David Grassi earlier this evening of Energy Transportation Group, who was at the game and he was watching. And even though the Canadians were down early, he was optimistic that they were going to come back, because that's the beauty of this team, Mapper. Even though they're in a rebuild, no game is over. You get the feeling that they come back because they can score goals with relative ease. Tonight, unfortunately, was not one of those nights. They just didn't have it. So the big question is, why? And I think I know why, but I'm going to ask you, whose fault was it? What do you attribute the loss to tonight?
It's a tough question because you can't only blame one guy. But
the answer is easy.
Well, it is. I mean, Jake Allen is having struggles lately, and it's tough.
Why did they all struggle? Why did they all struggle? I ask you a question. Why?
Well, I mean, when you're down 3-0,
I blame him. C'est la faute à lui. C'est le livre de Pierre Gervais.
Well, let's talk about that.
I'm going to tell you something. I'm obviously being sarcastic. And I tweeted tonight que c'est la faute du livre de Pierre Gervais. And a lot of people were like, well, no, Allen wasn't good. Well, no, they just had a bad... I said, folks, I thought my sarcasm was obvious. Okay.
Well,
having
no
said all
sarcasm
that,
on social medias.
Having said all that, this book, ça continue de faire jaser. It's making people talk. I have never seen a former equipment manager write a book and it dominate the airwaves the way it has here in the city of Montreal and in La Belle Province, because Pierre Gervais had a lot of nice things to say in the book. And I've read about 70, 75 pages just after about 24 hours after getting my hands on it, or just over 24 hours. I picked it up yesterday. I probably had my hands on it around 6:30 last night. But he really took it to Marc Bergevin. He really took it to Max Pacioretty. He really took it to Dominic Ducharme. Called Max Pacioretty a bad person.
That is severe. I mean,
said that the staff was happy when he was traded. Said that Yanni Nienema basically was a bum. Said that Mike Camilleri was one of the most selfish, egotistical players he's ever had to deal with. And him too, when he was traded after the second period, nobody was crying. I'm paraphrasing a little bit, by the way, here. It's not all, but I'm not, this is basically the gist of what he's been saying. Dominic Ducharme said he's a nice guy, but he never lost the locker room because he never had it, and went on to mention that he was, one of the most disorganized coaches he's ever seen. So there was a lot coming out of the book, and then our buddy Jean-Charles Lajoie said earlier this evening that he has it on good information that Pierre Gervais wanted a 3-year contract extension, and that Marc Bergevin offered a 1-year extension and not 3. And so he believes that it was probably kind of like settling a score for Pierre Gervais in regards to Marc Bergevin.
Well, I think that Pierre Gervais would take a mulligan if he could. I can tell you that the last days were pretty hard on him.
Yeah.
More than what he's saying. Because, I mean, he's saying, I would do it the same thing and blah, blah, blah. I can tell you he had it rough lately. And stop with you have to read all the book. No, it's divided in chapters. So you read one chapter, the next one is completely something else. So when I hear, did you read the book? Yeah, I actually did. But you don't need to read all the book to understand that. And, okay, it's not my personal opinion, okay? But the fans will be happy because you have access to the locker room and information that are, pretty, inside the locker room. As a journalist point of view, it's great work. by Mathias Brunet because
it's fantastic work by Mathias Brunet, who, by the way, was pretty cool with Pierre Gervais, because on a couple of occasions he said to him, Pierre, do you really want to write that? Do you really want to say that? And he didn't have to say that.
I can't believe Pierre did it if he knew it would be that big. But the third part is on the hockey side, and I tell the exact same thing to Jean-Charles. Yesterday, I received phone calls from coaches, different level. I received texts from players, different level. Players that, I haven't talked for months. And they cannot believe what happened. And one told me this morning, my trainer got in the locker room, and I can tell you felt pretty cheap, pretty bad, pretty sick. It's a game changer. And Pierre Gervais, he is such a nice person.
He is.
He's been so polite, so nice with me, and I can say the same thing for all the journalists. He's been so nice. So I'm not talking about him. I'm not saying he's right or he's not right.
Yeah.
But I can tell you that after 35 years of a perfect reputation, it changed. There's a before and there's an after. And I am not sure he calculated that what he built in those 35 years would explode like that in a matter of days because of this book. And again, stop about that omerta makes that there's some things like Hockey Canada. No, it's not the same thing. It's like a family. Stuff happen in a family. Pierre Gervais, he's like the confident, the best friend, the dad, or the big brother, or whatever. And
if I can, Mapper, if I can, because Mathias has kind of defended it by saying that there is no off-the-record conversation that's in there, but his opinion and his perception. I mentioned earlier this evening on GEC, on TVA Sport, that when he says, Marc Bergevin used to dress with shorts and wear sandals, wear flip-flops, and it was unprofessional, and I didn't like it, and Claude Julien didn't like it either, and Claude Julien thought that Bergevin should always be wearing a suit, and when we would see Bergevin with shorts and sandals, Julien would give me a look. Then he brought Claude Julien into that, and I think that's unfair, because I think he's put Claude Julien in an uncomfortable position, who's probably reading the book and is saying, hey, Pierre, it's one thing for you to have opinions, but what are you bringing me into this for? And that's where I think there was a faux pas, among other things. Another thing, and I'm not so sure Pierre thought about this, even though he has said, hey, whoever wants to write a book going forward, you can. He now leaves himself open to a lot of criticism as well, because if someone else decides to write a book, or a player at the end of their career decides to go to social media, or their agent decides to go to social media for them, it could get ugly, because nobody is perfect. And I'm sure, as professional and as great as Pierre Gervais was at his job, there might be a story or two that he probably doesn't want to get out there. And now it might. He kind of like opened a can of worms.
Maybe I would be surprised, because again, his resume was immaculate, and one of his biggest strengths was discretion. And you said that Mathias said nothing was like off the record, but his job is off the record. Like it's the nature of the thing. The trainer is way more important than what a lot of people can think. He's not the GM, but it is so important, because he can hear everything. When a player goes in the coach's office and he's not playing, or the coach is giving some crap to him, and he comes out of the room, obviously he's going to be mad. He might be sad. He might say stuff about the coach, like he's a complete anything. And the trainer is there. So it's everything. So again, I'm
Well,
Last night.
it doesn't look like it's going to end because Jean-Charles, who earlier this evening, just past 6:00, went on TVA Sport and talked about the contract, now says that he's got his hands on more information. And tomorrow morning at 7:45 a.m., he's going to divulge that at BPM Sports Radio, 91.9 FM if you're listening out of Montreal. So listen then, and also listen at 8:05 because there's a very, very good-looking gentleman with black curly hair and bluish-green eyes that makes an appearance Monday to Friday at around that time as well. All right, well, now let's
who did not make an appearance last night? The players who had confirmed that they would be there. They confirmed, and I have the list. Suzuki, Caulfield, Montembeault, Jake Allen, just Edmondson, just to name a few, were supposed to be there. They did not show up. His Pat Langlois, the guy who's taking his place, I'm not 100% sure, but as far as I know, he was not there. That tells you a lot. It tells you a lot. So it was big, and I think that
they didn't want to look like they were. Yeah, they didn't want to look like they were supporting what Pierre Gervais was saying, and some of them out of solidarity, of course, for Marc Bergevin and Dominique Ducharme, they didn't want to show up as well. They were asked so many questions about it earlier in the morning. They figured if they would have gone to the 5 Cassette last night at the Bell Center, they would have been bombarded with questions, and it's just a distraction that they didn't want, period.
And despite what he's saying in public, he would take a mulligan. Trust me.
I think so.
He did not think it would be that bad. He did not think that his perfect reputation would be so hit, like a hard hit.
Mapper, I'm not going to lie to you. A part of me feels bad for him because I look at him doing the interviews, and I can tell that it's gotten to him. And he's trying to camouflage it pretty well, but he's rattled. You can tell. And by the way, he's set to join me on the Sick Podcast on Monday night. If all goes well, he might even join me before, but by Monday for sure, it looks like he will. A shout out to matrixhomefitness.ca if we can. Bring the workout home. Discover a club quality workout in the comfort of your own home. Visit matrixhomefitness.ca, whether it's an elliptical, whether it's a treadmill, whether it's a bike for cardio and workout equipment. Strong, smart, beautiful. All right, let's get back to the game if we can. Why don't we go Agnello and Sammy back at Master Control? If you can bring up the Canadiens lineup. And here we go. Suzuki with Caulfield on his left and Doc on his right. Dvorak with Gallagher on his right and Slafkovsky on his left. We'll talk about him because, of course, with Mike Hoffman's injury, Slafkovsky got promoted to the second line. Monahan with Anderson and Dadonov, Evans, Armia, and Pezzetta. On defense, Gouli, Savard, Matheson, Edmondson, Harris, and Weidman. And Jake Allen was in goal. First things first. Jackeye and Kovacevic were a healthy scratch tonight, Marc-Andre, and I understand there's a rotation. I get it. What I don't understand is that two of the biggest defensemen on the Montreal Canadiens were out of the lineup against a team that is very big in the Buffalo Sabres.
Yeah, I was surprised too because Harris and Kovacevic played pretty well so far this season. But at the same time, I mean, you have to play Weidman. You had to bring back Jordan Harris. I can understand. And Weidman did a good job trying to do things. But no, it was surprising. I think maybe Jackeye needed a break. I think he's going to play tomorrow. It's, you fight Delaurier, you fight Olivier.
And by the way, that's a good point that you just said, because Olivier's on the other side, you would think Jackeye is going to be in the lineup tomorrow night in Columbus.
Well, that's my guess, and I'm not saying that they're going to fight, and I really hope Jackeye is going to slow down on the fights. I mean, I agree with you. But he's going to have – he doesn't need to do it. He is 21. People forget that he's a kid fighting men's. Like Delaurier has been very polite and nice in that fight. Have you seen it? I mean, he's dropping, he's got him. He could just go boom, boom, boom. He's waiting so Jacky can take his grip, and it seems like, okay, here we go, bang, bang. But it was really Jacky, like a kid fighting a man. He doesn't need to do that. So maybe he needed a break or whatever. I think it was a good decision. Again, I was kind
I'm
of
so
surprised.
immature because the second you said he can go boom, 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 I kept on thinking of boom, boom, boom. Let's go back to, remember that? That was an oldie, but a goodie. An oldie
reminds
by a
me
goodie.
of you in your spa and lots of bubble.
Yeah, no. Listen, hey, I'm going to agree with you on this one because Montreal Canadiens fans, they get carried away a little bit easily. I understand a lot of people were excited when Arbor Jacky absolutely obliterated Zach Cashin, especially after Cashin took a run at Samuel Montembeault a year ago. I have to admit, I was blown away how easily Jacky made it look versus Zach Cashin. But our buddy George Larac joined me here on the Sick Podcast, and he's a regular contributor. And as a matter of fact, he's going to join me tomorrow night at 10 p.m. on the Sick Podcast. And George, even when Jacky beat Zach Cashin, said, I'm noticing some flaws in his fight game, and he's going to have to correct those because or else he's going to go up against the Wilson, or he's going to go up against the Reeves, or he's going to go up against the McDermott, and he's going to get corrected severely. And like you mentioned, he's a 21-year-old young man fighting older men who've been doing it for a very long time at the National Hockey League level. And if your technique is not on point, you can get seriously hurt. And for me, he's not a fighter. He's a hockey player who knows how to defend himself. He's a hockey player who knows how to fight. He shouldn't be looking for a fight every game.
No, and tomorrow ask Georges about his grip. I've noticed that often he takes the guy here. I'm not sure it's the best, to prevent the guy from punching you. Normally you try to, squeeze here. He's going here. Anyway, ask Georges. Georges, I'm really not a professional fighter, but that's what I noticed. And he like Jacky said it, Marty St. Louis said it, you just mentioned it. He is not a fighter. He's a good hockey player who can fight, and he's going to get better as both, fighting, but most importantly, playing. And this guy could be with like Montreal for years to come, but you don't want him to make a Mike Komisarek of himself. You remember when he got beat the crap out by Lucic? He was never the same after. You do not want that to happen.
I'll tell you a quick story. The Canadiens are playing the Bruins, and Lucic is going after Komisarek. They haven't fought yet. And Komisarek and I at the time shared a mutual friend who's a friend of the players still today. And they're talking after the game, and I'm hanging out with them. And, Komisarek is sharing a story about Lucic and the fact that, he didn't want to waste his time with him and stuff like that. I look at my buddy and I say to him, tell your buddy Como, who's Komisarek, they called him Como. I said, tell him to stay away from Milan Lucic because that guy is a really tough guy and he wants no part of him. Anyway, at one point, he accepted the invitation, and we all know what happened. He got absolutely obliterated. And Mike Komisarek's a very proud guy. So on a second occasion, on the second occasion, Lucic wanted to fight him again when the Bruins swept the Canadiens the centennial year, 2009. And Komisarek wanted no part of it. But because the Bruins swept the Canadiens, Lucic didn't care if he took a penalty. And he just started wailing away at Komisarek. 2 shots. And Komisarek wanted no part of it, but he decked him again. And Komisarek's a proud guy. And years later, he tried to redeem himself wearing a Maple Leafs jersey, playing for the Leafs. He tried to fight Lucic again. And by the time the fight was over, Komisarek's face, it was like a punching bag. And I like Mike Komisarek a lot.
Yeah.
And he had a very good guy, and he had a good career. But fighting Milan Lucic a couple of times, those were not the best decisions of his career because he had, before he fought, he had a certain mojo and a certain swagger. And then after he got corrected by Lucic, that swagger was gone. It was gone.
Yeah.
And then the entire National Hockey League realized, he's not a great fighter. Now, Jack Guy's a lot tougher than Komisarek, don't get me wrong. But the way he fights right now, if he were to fight, let's just say his next 3 fights would be versus a Reeves or a McDermott or versus, a Wilson.
He's a heavyweight. It could have been way worse than it was.
Yes. I don't think he's in the category of those other guys. But yes, he is a heavyweight. There's no doubt about it. But and look, some will say he's only had 3 fights today, but you know as well as I do, he'll take on anybody. Like if the opportunity is there, Jack Guy will fight anyone and he'll accept every invitation. And I even get the feeling that he'll accept every invitation regardless of what the score is, regardless of how much time is on the clock or how much time is left on the clock. He wants to make a name for himself in the National Hockey League. And I think he's better off making a name for himself by just being a good, hard-hitting, hard-nosed defenseman, period.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
Yeah, and his moment was not the best last week against Columbus because they just tied the game 2-2, and then I don't know. He's got
Mapper, he had a good explanation, though. I don't know if you heard it. Did you hear it? Because he answered to it. He said what momentum was lost. It was at the end of the period, and we were going into a break of 17 minutes, and we would be back. So he didn't think the timing was bad.
Was it necessary?
Well, that's another question.
So that's the point. I mean,
yeah,
I don't know. And again, just want to be clear. I really love the kid. He's a great kid, great person, very humble, very polite, good hockey player. We're just saying you don't have to do it like every game. You do not have to. So let's hope he's gonna calm down about fighting. And yeah, he's a good hockey player too. So, and I don't know if you noticed, but we don't talk about Justin Barron anymore.
No.
Which is pretty big.
Well, listen, we don't talk about him anymore, but at one time we will, because I'm convinced they're going to end up trading a veteran defenseman at the deadline. I believe that. And I think we're going to see Justin Barron before the season is over.
Probably, yeah. But, yeah, let's say that for now, Mike Matheson will have to, get his game back if we want to have a value for him, because I don't know if you saw that. Was it Tuck, that toe drag against Matheson tonight?
It was Alex Tuck who did the toe drag. He went around Matheson, and then it ended up being a 2-on-1 once he made the pass. Look, let's talk about it. In the first period, Matheson hit Skinner, a pass to Thompson, a pass to Dahlin, a wrister upstairs, blocker side, 1-0 Buffalo. The Canadians were disorganized. Quinn had a shot that went off Allen's shoulder. Cousins was supposed to be marked by Gouli, took a few whacks at it. The puck laid there for Peterka. Savard couldn't tie him up. That goal makes it 2-0. Yeah. And after that, there's a fight. Pizzetta hammers Asplund into the boards. He takes a penalty. Yost hits Weidman. They get into a fight. Yost was your winner there. The Sabres go on the power play, and Tuck's pass to the point, and it goes back to Tuck with a wrist shot. Dvorak and Savard were screening. It beats Jake Allen short side. That makes it 3-0. And Mapper, this is what I was talking about there. When he made it 3-0, if the Canadians weren't playing tomorrow night, Jake Allen was getting pulled.
Probably, but no choice. You're going with Sam Montembeault. He had a rough night last week here in Columbus. You want to put him in perfect situation if you can. But Jake Allen, he knows he's not playing well, but the defensive squad is having trouble lately. You talked about that second goal. David Savard was, I don't know, he was kind of looking for the puck. Matheson and Edmondson, it's a little bit hard lately, but they need.
It's hard for Savard too. It's hard for Savard too. Yeah. He looks like he's out of steam already.
Yeah, well, Savard, how many minutes he played? Well, he played 20 minutes. It's not too much, but yeah, lately it's kind of hard. I don't know. It's normal though. It's normal. We were expecting it, so let's not be surprised right now that by what's happening. It's normal. It's gonna happen, but I still think that the kids will learn, and we did not see them like give up again despite the score. I don't think we can say this team gave up, which is a great news again.
By the way, a difficult night for Jake Allen. I really don't think he's having a good season at all thus far. And he took an elbow to the face from Lyubushkin. Here's a guy who I believe has had like 3 or 4 documented concussions in a span of just over 2.5 years. You know, I hope Jake Allen has a good long career. I really do. I don't think it's going to happen. I mean, this
Are you talking about Jake Allen or Jake Evans?
Jake Evans, pardon me.
Okay.
He just takes too many shots to the face, too many shots to the head. It's not good, Mapper.
It is not. You never know, but I mean, he's a brilliant kid, and the medical staff wouldn't let him play if they had any doubts. But he's small, and it's a problem. He's small, and he's got grit. He doesn't care going in the traffic, and you've seen he got hit to the head, and then after there's some shoving with Skinner at some point after a face-off. He doesn't care about it. But again, Jake Evans right now is not. You got to put points on the board. The medical stuff is important. That's the most important. But if he wants to have a career, yes, being healthy. But 1 point in 18 games. Michel Therrien always said, no matter where you are on the lineup, 4th line, 3rd line, whatever, you need at some point to put points on the board.
100%.
And he's playing well defensively. And again, he has some grit. He doesn't shy away from rough stuff. But you have to put points. 1 point in 18 games is not enough.
The good news for the Canadians, or for Cole Caulfield, because the Canadians are going to have to pay him more money, is that he scored again. Savard, the goalie, to Caulfield, a one-timer from the left side, of course. And there you have it. He's a right-handed shot, and he ripped it. Anderson didn't even move almost, I think. He narrowed that lead to 3-1. They get the period number 2. Alex Tuch with the tuck-in move on Michael Matheson to Thompson on a 2-on-1 to Skinner, and Skinner makes it 4-1. And then Sean Monahan takes a wrist shot. Anderson gives up a juicy rebound, and he scores on the rebound. Juicy was it? And that's how period number 2 ended. In period number 3, with the Canadians trailing 4-2, Thompson to Tuch, a pass to Yoki Haru makes it 5-2, and then Skinner to Thompson down the right wing, quick wrist shot up and over Allen's glove. That makes it 6-2, and Thompson had 3 or 4 quality scoring chances thereafter. Brought down. There's a penalty. The Sabres go on the power play. Cousins to Skinner, right side, left shot, one-timer, beats Jake Allen short side. And I don't know if you saw this, Mapper, but it looked like with Skinner scoring to make it 7-2 in his 5th point of the game, it looked like he was showboating, and they showed images of Brendan Gallagher on the bench who didn't find it funny. He wasn't happy at all.
Well, I mean, at 7-2, there's not a lot of thing being funny, but sorry, I'm just watching the goal again.
Go ahead.
It's funny when it's you. Remember when Slavkovsky scored his first goal? He humiliated that brown guy from the Arizona. So what goes around comes around. Yes, but it's just, I mean, it's not gonna be remembered for the next game. It's just, it's hockey stuff. It's 7-2. People, well, Gallagher's always mad when he's losing. Like, no, he did the same exact thing as Slavkovsky against the Arizona. He yelled at someone or whatever. Yeah,
that's exactly what he did. 1 or 2 more things, actually, before we go, and we're going to open up the phone lines in the next couple of minutes here at 1-888-5856. It's 1-888-585-7425. If you want to jump on a line, I will take your call. I know that, of course, a lot of you want to talk and want to have reaction to this game. Slavkovsky on the second line with Dvorak and Gallagher. What did you think?
Perfect. Slavkovsky is playing so well. He started, on the 4th line was the strategy of the the team of Marty St. Louis. I called it the Nick Suzuki's way instead of the Kotkaniemi's way, who got everything, like the big minutes, power play, first line. Suzuki had to work his tail off from the fourth line, small minutes, and then went on the third line, power play, blah, blah, blah. And, you see that it did work. So it's the same with Slavkovsky. Great attitude, great kid. And he's willing to put the work and not having like everything cuit sur, how do you say that in English? Tout cuit dans le bec, like, have it easy.
Yeah, no, I understand. I'm still trying to figure out the translation of tout cuit dans le bec. So if somebody can help me out, that's one that I don't know. What are you expecting tomorrow night in Columbus? You're there in ending. What are you expecting tomorrow night in Columbus?
Oh, what am I expecting? Well, Columbus is playing well lately. I think it's going to be another tough one. It's a back-to-back. It's again, I don't think against the Flyers it was exciting at the end, but it was a slow start again. It was tough last week against Columbus. I'm not sure. I expect it's not going to be like tonight. That was very bad, but it's going to be a tough one. And I hope Samuel Montembeault is playing like he was before last week. But yeah, there's going to be some rough nights. And the only positive, and I'm sure the same thing is going to happen tomorrow. They will not stop working, and that's the most important for me right now.
Logic would dictate that we're going to see goals again tomorrow, right? We saw goals tonight.
Lots of cannon.
We saw goals versus Philadelphia, and we saw a lot of goals the last time the Canadiens played Columbus. But there's so much of an urgency right now that they have to turn around and play better. I think it might be tighter, and I think it might be lower scoring tomorrow. I'm not sure.
About wins. You remember? Yeah. It's not about wins this year.
No, it's about getting better. It's about progression, correct? Yeah. And you're getting better with each and every show. I wish I could say the same thing for me, but probably not. Merci beaucoup,
You're already the best.
All right. Simply the best, better than all the rest, better than anyone. I wish I had the words. Hold on a second. Can we get the lyrics to that song? I love Tina Turner, Simply the Best. Really, really good. I think it's now time for You Called.
You Called. Presented by Playground.
Is brought to you by Playground, your premier gaming destination located just over the Mercier Bridge, only minutes from downtown Montreal. And this is the time now where I'm going to get to your calls at 1-888-585-SICK, 1-888-585-7425. Your thoughts, your observations on the Montreal Canadiens losing by a score of 7-2 to the Buffalo Sabres. The Canadiens got it handed to them tonight. In my opinion, their worst performance of the season. They just didn't have it. And you saw it right from the start of the game to right to the end of the game. They started bad. They ended bad. It was bad. And they got dominated by Jeff Skinner and Tage Thompson, especially. Those two guys manhandled the Montreal Canadiens. They had absolutely no solution for them whatsoever. At one point, they tried to go offense versus offense. It didn't work out. And Caulfield gets a goal, but, Nick Suzuki was not Nick Suzuki tonight. And he's not the only one. I mean, at the end of the day, who played well for the Montreal Canadiens tonight? I don't think there's too many guys that did. 1-888-585-7425. Let's jump on the lines. And if we don't have any calls right now, we'll take some comments. Agnello and Sammy, you can bring them up and let me know when people are calling in. Gordon says, 17 goals against in 3 games. Your comment? My comment is that your players get better trying stuff, playing an offensive brand of hockey. I don't care how bad they are defensively. You remember when they put so much onus on wanting to be so good defensively that if the game was tied in the third period with 5 minutes left in the game or 5 minutes left in regulation, that the Montreal Canadiens would trap and trap and trap so they can bring the game to overtime and they could pick up a point. And then once they got to overtime, instead of putting their offensive players on 3-on-3 hockey, they would put their defensively responsible players, and you probably didn't see offensive players until the third or fourth shift. And by that time, the game was probably over because they probably ended up surrendering. And when they got to overtime, the Canadians really wanted to take it to shootouts then because they thought that with Carey Price in goal, they could end up winning the game and picking up a couple of points. I am sick and tired of what we used to see, and I'm okay that they're not very good defensively right now. I'm okay that they're giving up a lot of goals. I want them to score a lot of goals. I want them to generate a lot of offense. I want them to have a lot of offensive confidence. I want some players' value to go up so like that they can trade them and end up getting some assets. And clearly, and you know what? Between you and I think I've made this clear already, I want them to lose more than they're going to win. This is a draft with some generational talents. And I, for one, would be very happy if the Montreal Canadiens would have the first or the second or the third pick in the draft. And I know that a lot of people don't agree with me because they're just tired of losing. But I say if you lose one more year, more often than not, you're going to end up winning a lot more for several years. That's the way I see it. How do you see it? Let's go to the phone calls, and we go to Larry in Ontario. Larry, good evening.
Yes.
How are you?
Not too bad. Is this Tony?
It is.
Oh, I have to tell you, as we go along here, I live about 10 doors away from Josh Anderson, where he grew up.
Oh, really? That's pretty cool.
Yeah, he lived around the corner.
Wow. I live a couple of blocks away from Réjean Houle and Yvon Lambert. How about that?
But watching this kid grow up was something else, you know?
Yeah.
But I agree with you. We all have to be patient with this team. I see this team, and I see the depth of this team, and I see what they have coming up. And this management team with Ken Hughes and Gorton, you know, they're doing amazing things. You have a real good think tank there that are going to build a great team. And as you say, this draft coming up is awesome.
Awesome. I have a question for you. It might put you in a little bit of a bad spot, but I'll ask it anyway. You think Josh Anderson will be traded this year?
I have I'm stuck in between that one. They gave me.
Can I give you a scoop?
You know, my gut tells me I think so, but you know, you got to protect those young guys.
Can I give you a scoop?
Yep.
One team that wants him badly, because I mean, I'm sure there's a couple of teams that would take him. The New Jersey Devils want Josh Anderson badly. Believe me when I tell you that.
Have they got assets to come back?
Oh, they got a lot of assets to come back. They got great young players, and whether or not they want to give up it, listen, and I'm not talking about, the usual suspects. I mean, everyone knows. I mean, they're not trading, Jack Hughes, and they're not trading Nico Hischier, and but they got. I don't know how much they're willing to give up. I mean, but they got some players that they drafted that are not on this team right now, and I'm talking about defenseman Luke Hughes, Jack's younger brother. I'm talking about defenseman Simon Nemec. I'm talking about, winger Alexander Holtz. And I'm not saying that they would give one of those guys up for Josh Anderson. What I am telling you is that they want Josh Anderson badly. And, it doesn't mean you have to do a 1-versus-1 deal. You could end up spicing it up and throwing in other players or throwing in other picks. But I can tell you right now that based on what I'm hearing, the Devils want Anderson badly. Thanks for calling. Appreciate it. And of course, a lot of people are bringing up Simon Nemec's name because, of course, he's a Slovak, and so is Juraj Slafkovsky, and so is Philip Machar. And everyone remembers when they were, back in the hallway on the night of the NHL draft in Montreal, and they were hugging, and they took that picture, and it was pretty cool. We'll get to more calls at 1-888-585-7425. 1-888-585-SICK. We have Vito in Toronto. Vito, thanks for calling the Sick Podcast. What's going on? How are you?
Tony, good. Tony, how are you?
Very good. Thank you for asking, Vito.
Good, good. I'm calling you from enemy territory here in Toronto.
Oh, that's okay. I like Toronto.
Well, love Toronto, hate the Leafs. So
I hear ya.
calling about by the way, long-time listener, first-time caller.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for all your support over the years. I appreciate it.
Love your show. Love your show. You're doing a great job.
Thank you very much. We're building something here slowly, but surely we're building something, and we're pretty excited about it and pretty optimistic.
Awesome. I have to say that I did watch tonight's game. I hate rooting against the Habs, but I know this is sort of a necessary evil to lose these games. I'm on the same page as you. We need to rebuild. It's the only way that we're going to get elite talent, and I think it's something we should have done years ago.
You have been heard, and I think a lot of people share what you just had to say. Says Insta Customs, and thank you for your call. I appreciate it. There are at least 7 players who are on the trade market: Monahan, Dadonov, Hoffman, Armia, Drouin, Anderson, Edmondson, and Wideman. Who'll be the first domino? And he says Anderson. All right, okay. Back to the phone calls we go at 1-888-585-7425. 1-888-585-SICK. Ben is in Newfoundland. How you doing, Ben?
Oh, how you doing, Tony? How you doing?
Good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm good.
Good.
Well, short-time listener, first-time caller.
Welcome.
Thank you.
The line is yours, my man. Tell me what's on your mind.
To see what's going on with Toronto, where they're out another defenseman. Do you think Montreal has any leverage there with some of their veterans, Wideman, Savard?
Well, I don't think Toronto needs Chris Wideman. I do think they could use a Joel Edmondson. I do think they could use a David Savard. I mean, especially Edmondson. Look, both Edmondson and Savard won Stanley Cups in their career. Savard, of course, with the Tampa Bay Lightning, and Joel Edmondson with the St. Louis Blues. Either of those can fit in Toronto, but do the Montreal Canadiens want to help out the Toronto Maple Leafs? Is that something they want to do? Some will probably say yes, and others will play, if they can get an asset in return, and others will probably say no, and it doesn't matter, because if there's a demand for those players, well, then the Canadiens will probably just end up trading those players or one of those players to another team instead of Toronto, right? Because could you imagine you trade one of those players to the Toronto Maple Leafs go on and they do something special in the playoffs? A lot of people are not going to like that.
That's fair. But it does open it up for Montreal to let some of the younger guys play, I think, and probably work their way down towards the bottom of the standings.
I think that's going to happen eventually. So, look, the Canadiens will pick up more points than they did in the standings a year ago. But the way 1 year ago they ended up being a seller and traded Toffoli and traded Kulak and traded Ben Sherratt and traded Arturi Lehkonen, I think the exact same thing is going to happen this time around as well. The Montreal Canadiens are going to end up being a seller. I am convinced. Thank you for your call, Ben. Much appreciated.
Thanks so much.
There you have it. That was Ben in Newfoundland. We continue to get to your calls at 1-888-585-SICK. That's 1-888-585-7425. We have Jose in Montreal, or is it Jose? We'll find out. Hello.
It's Jose. I'm in Montreal.
It's Jose. Yes, Jose. How are you?
At the game. I'm doing good, Tony. How are you?
Very good. Thank you. Thank you very much.
So, I was listening to what you were saying earlier in the show, and they keep saying that they have to trade Anderson away. I have to say, I agree with that. But considering, yes, we trade Anderson away, what is the first need the team needs to assess? What do we hope that we get in return? What would be the priority?
Well, you want, a first-round pick, and you want a prospect. I mean, that's what you want, right? Josh Anderson is on a pretty good contract at $5.5 million for the next several years. So a team that's going to be acquiring him knows that they can have Anderson locked in at 5.5. And I know that 5.5 sounds like a lot, but you also have to consider that the cap is going up. Now, I will say this. Josh Anderson's not one of the first guys you want to trade. I think we gave a couple of names before, some of the usual suspects. However, Anderson is the guy that's going to have the most value. So you have to determine whether or not he's worth trading this year, where you can get a real good asset or two in a real good draft year, or are you better off holding on to him for the next couple of years, because he is a guy who's tough to play against. He is a guy who does lead the team in hits. He is a guy who will defend his teammates if he's there. And so, he's not one of the first guys that you want to trade. I mean, he's not one of the first guys that you want to trade. And so they have to think about that. They got to think about that.
I hear you, Tony. Yeah, and I do believe, yes, we need a draft pick and a solid prospect. But my question, I'm referring more to what position. What position would we need to reinforce? Because we have plenty of young kids in the defensive end that are good. The first line, I
think the answer to that is easy. Take a look at a lot of players that are trade bait for the Canadians, right? Whether it's Dadonov, whether it's Hoffman, whether it's Drouin, whether it's Armia, whether it's Anderson, right? What do these players have in common? That's my question to you. What do they have in common?
They're slumping.
They're wingers. So if they make a trade, they got to stock the cupboards again. So you have to go out, and if you can get a prospect that's a winger, you end up getting them, because if all these wingers are going to be gone in the next, year, or this year, or, max in the next year and a half, you're going to have to replace them with other wingers. How many other wingers are there not on this team, if you look at Laval right now, that can make the Canadians next season? I'm not so sure that there are too many. Thanks so much for giving me a call. I really, really appreciate it. It's time to go for gold.
Go for gold. A daily World Cup report.
Alfonso Davies keeps it himself. Goal!
Presented by Bijouterie Bossy.
And as we go for gold and we talk about the World Cup this morning at 5 a.m. Eastern time, Argentina took on Saudi Arabia, and the entire soccer world is still talking about this game. Why? Because the biggest upset of Qatar World Cup 2022 happened earlier this morning. Argentina started good. They were fouled in the box, and at the 10-minute mark, Lionel Messi converted his PK to put Argentina up by a score of 1-0. And at the 28-minute mark, it looked like Lautaro Martinez made it 2-0 Argentina, but they went to VAR, who ruled him offside. But there was a mistake, because VAR didn't take into account the position of the left back, and then social media started that the fix was in and all that stuff. And folks, I'm going to get to that in just a second, but at the 49-minute mark, there was a great shot, far corner by Dalsari, who tied it at 1, and 3 minutes later, a couple of moves and a rocket at the top of the box, far corner by Malki, who made it 2-1 for Saudi Arabia, and that's the way it ended. And I say to all of you conspiracy theorists who are thinking that Saudi Arabia and their riches in oil and the fix must be in, corruption exists in football, in soccer. Yes, it does. Unfortunately, it does. But if there would have been corruption because they wanted Saudi Arabia to win, they wouldn't give Argentina a penalty shot, would they? And by the way, the goal that made it 1-1 by Saudi Arabia was a great goal. The goal that gave Saudi Arabia a 2-1 lead was an absolutely fantastic goal. You can't fix stuff like that. They might practice those shots 100 times and probably miss every single time. So let's please stop talking, stupidities now. Denmark versus Tunisia late in the game with the score 0-0. Denmark thought they'd be awarded a PK for an apparent handball in the box, but it was judged not intentional. It was ball to hand and not hand to ball. So that game finishes 0-0. Mexico versus Poland, also 0-0. But the story of that game is one of the best goal scorers in the world in the last decade, Robert Lewandowski, who now plays for Barcelona, previously used to play for Bayern Munich. had a PK at the 58-minute mark, and it was saved by Ochoa, and he's Mexico's hero of the day. And France versus Australia, what a crazy start for the Aussies, who go up 1-0 at the 9-minute mark with a left foot right under the bar. What a strike to put Australia up by a score of 1-0. But then from the 27-minute mark to the 71-minute mark, four unanswered goals by France, courtesy of Rabiot, Mbappe, and 2 goals by Olivier Giroud, who ties France's all-time record for 51 goals for France. He ties Thierry Henry. So there you have it. And now, if we can, I'd like to bring up the games tomorrow. And of course, with the most important one, as far as us Canadians are concerned, will be at 2 p.m. Eastern with our Canadians men's national team taking on Belgium minus Romelu Lukaku. And it looks like Canada will be good to go. Davies is going to go, and it looks like Eustachio is going to go, and it looks like Milan Borjan is going to go in goal. And those 3 players were questionable just until a couple of days ago. But tomorrow's games, starting at 5 a.m. Eastern, Morocco versus Croatia. At 8 a.m., Germany versus Japan. At 11 a.m., it's Spain versus Costa Rica. And once again, at 2 p.m., it's Belgium versus Canada. Goal for Gold is brought to you by Bijouterie Bassi, where I got this. Love it. They have provided professional service and fine jewelry for over 30 years. Go see my friend Jenny Dioris. Visit the store at 9640 Boulevard Saint Michel in Montreal. Call them. Take down the number, 514-387-9528. Special thanks to our sponsors. It was brought to you in part, the Sick Podcast was, by Energy Transportation Group, by 8.6 Beer, and by Lacage. Thank you, Sick Army, for being with me. We are growing slowly but surely. Tell your friends about it. We go live on YouTube, on Facebook, and on Twitter. Weeknights, Monday to Friday, starting at 10 p.m. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place, right after the Canadians visit the Columbus Blue Jackets. I'm Marinaro. Have a good night. Habs lose 7-2. There's always tomorrow.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts. The Sick Podcast is brought to you by Energy Transportation Group. Driven to be different. 8.6. Intense by nature. And La Cage. If the last time you went to La Cage was when the Habs won the Cup, it's time you went back to La Cage. The menu will surprise you.